us on the brink of nuclear war, because those are the stakes. Those are the stakes of keeping NATO around. Those are the stakes of U.S. imperialism, and those are the stakes of the war in the Ukraine. We have a right to say that if you're going to use our money, do not use it to destroy lives. Use it to build something.
As we approach the one-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine, people in the United States are growing tired of what they describe as unconditional political and financial support for Ukraine coming from Washington. U.S. aid to Ukraine now exceeds $100 billion, with the White House sending an additional $4 billion last week. Today, I'm at a demonstration in Times Square where people are calling for an end to the war and for money being spent on bombs and bullets to be redirected to the needs of the people. When the war in Ukraine began, Western countries, under pressure from the United States, immediately pledged support for Ukraine for, quote, as long as it takes. Anyone who questioned the role of NATO in instigating the war, or the wisdom of sending advanced weapons into a war with a nuclear power, was called a Putin apologist. Politicians directed huge sums of money for Ukraine and levied massive sanctions against Russia without considering the consequences. As the war dragged on, governments began to insist that people sacrifice more and more for the Ukrainian war effort, especially as sanctions against Russian oil caused an unanticipated spike in world energy prices. Germany passed laws to ration heat, hot water, and light usage. British households faced an 80% rise in energy bills. When questioned on how the British government would address the energy crisis, then Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that British people needed to bear those costs because Ukrainians were paying for this war in blood. French President Emmanuel Macron had a similar response, calling higher prices, quote, the price of liberty, as if that's what was motivating Western powers, liberty and not geopolitics. During this time, the United States was facing the highest inflation in 4 decades. While workers found themselves having to choose between paying their light bill and buying groceries, the Biden administration was emptying out the national treasury for the war. Since the start of the war, the U.S. has committed over $100 billion to Ukraine, a huge portion of which is essentially a direct subsidy to weapons manufacturers who are getting paid to make weapons for Ukraine. These companies are making huge profits off the war, and they don't even try to hide it. On a call with investors, the CEO of Raytheon said, I fully expect we're going to see some benefit from it. To put $100 billion into perspective, consider the fact that $100 billion is more than the budget of both the U.S. Department of Education and the Environmental Protection Agency. And at a time when cities across America are flooding, crucial water supplies and rivers are drying up, and schools are closing their doors due to lack of funding, Americans have just about had it with their government telling them that this war is a greater priority than their own needs.
While the United States military has $900 billion to spare on war, we have millions of people in the United States of America that do not have a place to lay their head.
That's right.
We have millions of people who can't have a decent job. What moral authority does the United States of America have to go and intervene anywhere in the world? We got enough business to take care of here.
If Dr. King was alive today, he would be disgusted by what he is seeing with the United States. He died a man that was hated because he was an anti-war and a labor activist that actually helped the sanitation workers unionize before his death. So Martin Luther King would not be at all enjoying this or even being a part of this. He would actually probably be out in the streets with us or building his own movement to be anti-war, because war is disgusting and nothing good comes out of it. So it's a smack in the face to not only Martin Luther King, but to all black people in America to be lying and thinking that this is what Martin Luther King will be agreeing with when it's not true. And all of y'all need to be ashamed of yourselves, honestly.
Today, we look back and see that Dr. King was ahead of his time, and that he was on the right side of history and that he was demonized because of it. Challenging the rich and powerful is never easy. But we don't honor Dr. King by doing what's easy and going along with the status quo. We honor him by saying what's on the side of peace and justice, even if it's unpopular.